Test one. Okay. Okay, now I can be heard. Oh my gosh. I've already been going for 17 minutes and nobody could hear me. That is. Yeah, that is sad. Oh, I will start from the beginning. That's no big. Anyway, let's start back from the beginning again. Oh no. Oh, that's sad. Dang. Well, I'll start back from the beginning. So, talking about planning short stories for comics. Um, for short stories, there's two kinds of say forms of short stories for comic books really. Um, one shots. There's one shots and miniseries. For one shots, stories that are contained and told in a single chapter issue, and for miniseries, it's a story with one focused plot told within a predetermined amount of chapters. So when doing comics, you're generally dealing with these kinds of short stories. Specifically for short stories, the kind of things that you'll be looking at. So when you're starting off, it's kind of trying to decide which one of these things that you're looking for or trying to do, and which goal you have in mind. Kind of determine how your story turns out as well, how your story develops. So the first thing that you want to do there is find the subject. What it is that you want to do a story around? What it is that you're wanting to base a story around? So for that, it would be I start off by giving an example of choosing whether you want to do an original story or one based on fan art. That's usually where I start. Um, Both have pros and cons. For the original story, the pros are you have a lot of freedom with that. You can come up with whatever you want. Um, if you want to sell the comic in the future or starting with the goal to sell the comic, original story is the best thing to do for that. You'll be able to sell it, publish it, uh, go further with it if you desire. So that's lots of benefits of original story. The cons for that, though, when doing an original story, it's also more work that gets put into it. So you have to design characters, come up with a world, kind of design the world, world building, and also that's a lot more that has to be determined there for when you're doing an original story. Um, you can simplify a lot more, but there's still build world building and designing and stuff that you have to do for that. So that's kind of like the pros and cons for that. It can end up taking maybe a bit longer for on that front. For fan art, there the pros for that are when you're doing a fan art based story, there's already a whole world for you to base things off of. There's the world is there, the characters are there, their personalities are there, and people are already familiar with that. So once you get into it, there's not a whole lot of explaining that you have to do. Like unless you're doing like an AU thing, alternate universe thing, there's not really a lot of explanation you have to do. And even then, setting that up is it's still pretty straightforward because people are familiar with the character, so there's not a whole lot that you have to do there unless you change quite a bit. So with fan art, you got a lot to work with already. The cons for fan art would be clearly if you wanted to sell a story, you can't do that with fan art. You can't try to go out and publish a fan-made story unless you get hired on to do something like that. That's different, but with fan art, you can't really go and sell the story. In different countries, there's different rules there. But I know for here, you can't go and try to like sell a fan-made comic like that. It really depends on the place. Maybe there's like a local comic shop or something. But in general, no, you generally won't be able to sell the story for the most part. And then you're restricted to being within that world. Again, you can do like an alternate universe thing, but there's kind of restriction of being in that world. Um, Really, that's like the main thing. But either one is a good choice. I'd say like if you're wanting to just practice or just want to start like doing for fun, like getting a hang of it, you can choose either original or fan art. But I would recommend fan art because of the fact that there's already a world there for you to work with. So as there's a world and characters there for you to work with, so there's something you like, and there's a story that you can come up with for that. Fan art's a good way to start, just so you can focus more on the storytelling aspect and less having to design a lot of extra things. Like that's a good way to be able to do a story relatively quickly without having to do a lot of the extra work of designing a whole new world. Like there's already a world there, people already be familiar, so you're just crafting a good story to work with and put in there. The next point is finding the plot and the idea, or define the plot or slash idea, and that's where these come in. I mentioned earlier that these are some short stories that I have done, specifically in short stories that I've done before, and just run down like when you come up with coming up with plots for a short story. You want to come up with something that'll be manageable to do within either like one single chapter or over the course of a few set chapters. So you want to come up with a story that is interesting enough but also small enough to be manageable in this. So start with Meta Knight Wants to Battle. With this, I wanted to do like a short, silly, cute Kirby story. And the idea I had was down here. Meta Knight wants to battle, but he keeps getting denied the opportunity for battle. Um, so that's the plot. It ended up being 16 pages long. It was simple enough to come up with something quick, simple enough to summarize, simple enough to get out in a decent amount of time. It took maybe just a month, 2, 3, or maybe around 2 or 3 months for getting that done. But with that, and also you want to make sure to kind of have a clear idea, just a general idea of where to go with the plot. Like you want a basic idea of it, where it begins and where it will end. Just brainstorm the concepts for that. But the simple, I knew, want to start with him really wanting that drive to battle, end with him kind of getting denied that, but ends up getting that him getting denied wanting to battle gets made up in a different way, where it doesn't end like completely sad and depressing. Over here you have Boxing Bugs. This little short was called Gone Fishing. For the plot with this, it was a mysterious fish appeared in Rumble's the pond of one of Rumble's friends, Denny right here, and he needed to help him get it out so that he can continue living in his house. 15. It was 15 pages long. This I wanted to come up with like a short side story, just highlighting a different part of the characters' lives, and I wanted to be able to do it within a decent amount of time. So I thought of an interesting little plot. There's a bit of mystery there. There's like a fish somehow manifested in the pond. It was never there before. So how to get there? Is it even a fish? And the resolution. They need to fish it out and get it out so that it won't be a danger to Rumble's friend. Right here, I have a Chilly Reception. It was a Kirby comic that I did for Inktober a few years ago. I want daily to be a very small plot, the resolution that'd be fairly quick and simple to get to, and that I brainstormed within maybe a day or two. But the idea is, I'm going to write it down. The plot was Kirby and his friend. Let's say it's Kirby and Waddle Dee are on vacation. Are on vacation and find out that there are mysterious blizzards mysterious blizzards kind of messing up the place, and try to go and find what's responsible for causing these blizzards. Let's see, Kirby while they're on vacation need to solve the mystery. Raging blizzards, as they say. So yeah, it follows them with that. I summed up the plot pretty quickly, but yeah, it starts with them just going on vacation and realizing that these blizzards are like kind of freezing the inhabitants there, and they want to find out what's responsible and stop it so the inhabitants can be safe again. So it has a really simple plot. That ended up being, let me see how many pages that ended up being. That one ended up being 28 pages long. Slightly shorter than the month it was for, October. But it was 28 pages long, and I managed to space it out, or condense the plot enough and come up with a quick way to resolve it in a way that would feel like a full story, but also didn't drag on and got to it pretty quickly. And then this one right here is an example of a multi-part one. The second part I have still to get to. But for this one, Pac-Man Ghost Gamble, the plot here was Pac-Man gets turned into a ghost by like a little ghost apprentice witch, you could say. And this lady, so the ghost witch wants to turn everybody into ghosts, and Pac-Man gets turned into a ghost, and he needs to get himself changed back, as well as figure out what the ghost witch has planned and stop her plans and get himself back to normal. So let's just write down the main kickoff of the plot was the idea of Pac-Man getting turned into a ghost. So, yeah. So let's write Pac-Man gets turned into a ghost. And needs to get back to normal and save Pac-Man. There we go. So yeah, the gist of that is Pac-Man getting turned to a ghost and realizing that this witch has probably more plans with what was used on him to turn into a ghost. He needs to get himself turned back to normal and stop whatever her plans are. And this one is a two-parter. So I spent the first part just having that moment where Pac-Man, he gets turned to a ghost, avoids being captured, and then realizes that something bigger is probably going on here, and then he heads off in his attempt to stop the ghost witch and get turned back to normal in the second part. So the first part is him getting turned to a ghost, figuring out something bigger is going on, and heading out. Then the next part would hold the rest of the resolution and what her big plans really are. So this would be an example of like I guess you could say kind of mini series, but yeah, a two like multi-chapter type of short story. So there's different ways you can do it, and it all depends on like your intent and the type of plot that you want to have. So if it's a plot with like really simple, like say these, where it can be made and done within a single chapter, just within a few pages. Then one shot's the type of thing you can do. If you have something that's slightly bigger, but you still want to make sure it's short, you can do one where it's split up into chapters, and then just each chapter covers a different part of the same plot, not trying to branch off into another plot, but it covers a different, covers the next part of the plot. And I find breaking it up helps it to not feel so overwhelming of trying to do it all in one go, you know. So if you have a plot that's still small, but it's still like kind of big, then splitting up into chapters helps it to not feel as overwhelming and be able to give it a proper kind of deadline for each part. So you have your subject, and bring this back up. So you have your subject, whether you choose this original short story, you get your plot together, and that's when you decide, what kind of story I'm trying to tell. Do I need to split up into more parts? And the more you refine the story, the more of an idea that you'll get. You can make sure it's simple. If it's slightly bigger, you can split it up. But there. And the other points I just want to make out are when you get the idea, just when you're trying to come up with something, you find the concept you like, you spend some time fleshing out the idea and the character's goal. Have a general idea for the end goal. That's a short story, just needs to be a self-contained thing, not something that branches on and on. Have your limits, make sure it's manageable. Short stories do need these limits, so like how long it will be, the scope of the story, so on. And then after that, just spend some time plotting it out. I find trying to write up like a summary, just like a good summary of the whole thing, helps with me personally. And then when I move to start scripting it, that's when I can flesh out more details, and that's when you start scripting, that's when you really get an idea of like how long the thing will be or how many pages that you'll need to really tell the story, and you can adjust things as you go there. So once you decide what type of story that you want to do, a one-shot or a mini-series, and once you find the subject you want to do, an original story or a fan-made story, then you start brainstorming and figure out what type of plot and idea that you want to get. Something manageable, something small, something you can either split into two parts or get done in maybe like say 20 pages or less. And then that's when you have to get these words going up. Number 3, start scripting. And this part honestly pretty straightforward. Once you start scripting out the idea, then like I mentioned, you get more of a clear idea of how long this thing will need to be. You break down the scenes, and then you realize, how things need to play out and how long the storyline ends up being. And you can always adjust in condensing if you want it to be smaller, shorter, or if you need to extend it a bit, be slightly longer. And that's when you can decide as well if you want to split it into parts, and so that it won't be overwhelming trying to do so much in one go. And for scripting, how you script it is really up to you. Me, I just do like a traditional way of scripting it, like a traditional comic script format. But if it's just something you're doing on your own, then I'd say it kind of doesn't really matter. I prefer to do like the usual page layout, like panel 1, panel 2, panel 3, just because it gives you a reminder of how many panels, how the page is going to be set up, how many panels you'll have, just so you can remember what the page looks like. You don't have to get super detailed with your descriptions. Doing more of that is if you're like working with somebody, so you both need to have a clear idea of what things will look like. So that's when you'll get into more detail in the script. But for yourself, I would personally recommend, just because it's my own preference, to make sure that you have like the number of panels and stuff marked down and what's going on in each panel, just so you have some clear direction. But overall, it's entirely up to you how you want to do it. I have done like a story before where I didn't have like a written script and just like kind of did it as I came up with it. That has its own pros and cons. But as far as scripting, it's up to you how you do it. If you're working with somebody, you do it more structured. But if it's something on your own, then you got a lot more freedom of how you do it. And let's see. Is there anything else I need to cover? Okay, yeah. I guess I'll say um, as far as after scripting, that's really just where drawing the comic comes in. Oh, before you draw the comic, you want to spend some time designing things. Um, like even with a story, like say if you choose fan art, it is a good idea to spend some time designing a location or getting a good idea of the location or extra things. If you're not using a well-known location, and then there's stuff you're gonna have to come up with, just for whatever the idea is. It's a good idea to do some concepts, a little bit of concept art and stuff for that, just so you won't just have to come up with things on the fly, because things generally look better if just have some sort of plan. And with original story, definitely spend some time getting concepts and designs together. Get character designs, side characters, extras, locations, all that. You want to have that before launching into drawing the comic, because it will help you in the long run. Instead of trying to just come up with stuff on the fly, it'll help you out and also make things look really good. So I definitely recommend that. And after you got that done, then that's when you start drawing the comic. Um, so I was going to write down start scripting, and let's write number 3 or number 4. Start get concept art together. And then say for number 5, after you have everything designed, then I say put a due date on your comic. So number 5, have a due date. There's another word for it that I just cannot think of right now. But have a due date, a time frame in which you actually want to get it done. Like set a date to aim for, and that's just to give you some focus and discipline of getting your short story done, because you don't want a short story to end up dragging on because you weren't focused on getting it complete, on working on it regularly, so on and so forth. Um, yeah, that really helps. I know it can be hard and difficult as far as that, but it will help you in the long run and just help you with being disciplined with this type of thing. Um, and I would say don't worry. If you don't initially hit the due date, do your best. To stay on track. But you have life things comes up. Some days, maybe something comes up. You don't have that much time. If you can spend a bit of time on it, like even just like maybe an hour or 30 minutes, so on, like just a bit of progress to make sure that things are still moving if you can. If you miss a date, don't beat yourself up over it, but just do your best to reach that date and try to push toward your goal of getting a short story done. Because once you get one short story done, you will love it. You'll definitely love it. It's very gratifying to finish a story, and that's that's another thing with doing short stories instead of like just immediately aiming for a really big one. The satisfaction of finishing a story, finishing something small, definitely gives you a lot more motivation to keep going, keep improving, keep trying things, and then being able to aim for your really big story. So yeah, having a due date to push for getting your story done, so you can get inspired to keep making things, and it'll start getting easier. It's definitely very, very good. Um, I think that's all I have to cover. Uh, I think something would be cool to do. This idea is just like an example of doing what I just explained. So let's try to come up with a hypothetical short story, um, just as an example of what you can do. So then we'll just do like the first two steps. Oh, I guess kind of three here, but first two steps. Let's say we're doing a one shot. So we're going to do a one shot, and that's the idea here. So let's say the idea is story about like Pikachu. Let's see if I remember how to draw Pikachu. So let's say we want to do a story, a Pokemon related story, and it's going to have Pikachu. Let's see if we have Pikachu. So yeah, let's say we want to do a Pokemon related story about Pikachu. Um, Here we have a one shot about Pikachu, and we can decide what it's about. So let's say for a one shot story would be something small enough to condense into a couple pages. Maybe it'll end up being, uh, let's say, 25 pages long. That's the type of story that can be condensed into that. Let's see, like at the most. And when you do this, that can definitely change once you start writing the script and see just like how much they'll actually need. But let's say it's a story about Pikachu wanting to. Let's say it's set in like a mystery dungeon universe, just to make it interesting. So Pikachu can be an explorer. So you have an explorer Pikachu, and say he's trying to find some sort of treasure. So Explorer Pikachu is trying to find treasure. And what's up with this treasure? Maybe it's set. Maybe okay. So yeah, Explorer Pikachu was given took on a task to find some treasure for a Pokemon that's going to pay him handsomely for it. And the treasure is in a very dangerous place. But Pikachu's brave, so he's not afraid of that. But it's in a very dangerous place that no one else really wants to go into. And the twist can be something is guarding it that's really dangerous, that's kept most moms from getting to it. And Pikachu will have to face that to get it, so it'll be like a big fight scene. So let's say the plot is um, Pikachu was hired by a rich, just throw a Pokemon name out there, say Meowth. Meowth to find a valuable treasure in a dangerous dungeon. Yeah, and just with that kind of plot alone, there's a lot of ways you can work it. You can work it to either be split up into parts, and you can work it to be a one shot. You just have to adjust some things, you know. So you can try to condense it a lot. Like you could shoot off in already, like in the dungeon. Maybe you could do like a brief little flashback or just him mentioning it or thinking about it to get a reader idea of how he got into the situation. Just stuff to like spare extra pages or extra setup and things that you need to do. There's a lot of ways you can work these type of mini stories, and mini stories do force you to get creative too, in like improving your storytelling and knowing how to tell these type of things without going too long. And that's another benefit of doing these things. So yeah, and with that, then you would spend time fleshing out this plot, flesh it out, refine it, start to get an idea of how you want it to end. Like try to imagine, like with these type of things, once you get like the basic plot, kind of get a general idea of how you want it to end. That'll also help you in, figuring out how things need to go and how you can get to it quickly, but not rush the story in a natural way. Stuff like that. But that's definitely a big benefit of short stories. Like with these, they force you to get creative and really try to think of how to tell a good story in a short amount of time. And it definitely helps a lot in improving your own storytelling and being able to get ideas for this stuff. But yeah, after you do that, you spend some time fleshing it out, really refining it, and then once you have an actually good idea general of how it's going to go from beginning to end. You don't have to have like all complete, I say complete details, but enough details of how it goes from beginning to end. Because I found when you start scripting, I know for me personally, more ideas start to come and how things should go and how things will connect. So I don't worry too much about like having all details together, but at least getting a solid idea of how you want the plot to go. Like say Pikachu has to find a valuable treasure in a dangerous dungeon, and then it turns out very dangerous Pokemon is guarding it. Maybe it's even a twist like this treasure is very important to this other Pokemon, and the other Pokemon is just really greedy or something. It's stuff like that to just figure out how you want your stories to end. But yeah, it's just a real example of coming up with this type of stuff. So I think that covers about everything. I know I definitely went on longer than this than I intended, mostly because I spent the first 16 minutes speaking and having absolutely no audio on. That's incredible. But I hope you found this. Really did enjoy this, and let me know about anything else you want me to cover. Just stuff that either that I'm doing, anything you want to know about my own process for what I do. I'll be willing to talk over it, sit down, show it, all that. So, and definitely let me know where else you may want to see or hear about, or just get my own thoughts about. But yeah, I think that's about it. Yeah, I'm glad to hear, Coral. Definitely glad to hear. Yeah, so yeah, definitely give me a shout of what else you may want me to cover on Fridays. I will gladly write down some points and say what I can say. But I think that'll be where I call it for now. This video will be here, for everyone who wants to look back and may want to hear this stuff again. But for now, call it a day. Thanks for watching and enjoy your weekend.